There are two main parts of the brain that help it effectively control the body. The first one is the central nervous system, which is essential in control and communication of the body. It sends and receives messages and is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. The next one is the peripheral nervous system, which is made up of nerves that branch off from the spinal cord and extend to all parts of the body. It also relays messages and is subdivided into the autonomic system, which is in control of your unconscious body processes, such as breathing, and the somatic system, which is in control of your voluntary movements like running. The first essential part is the central nervous system, which performs a fundamental function that contributes to organisms' life and behavior. The nervous system has three main functions: gathering sensory information from an external stimuli, synthesizing that information, and responding to those stimuli. The central nervous system is mainly devoted to information synthesizing function. During this step in the process, the brain and spinal cord decide on an appropriate motor response, which is based on the type of sensory input that is received. This system regulates everything from organ function to high-level thought and purposeful body movement, which is often why it's referred to as the control center of the body. It is made up of gray matter and white matter. Gray matter is made up of neurons, the cell type that forms the basis for all types of nerve cells, while white matter is composed of nerve fibers, called axons, which connect nerve cells. Because the brain and the spinal cord are so crucial to the body staying alive, they are given various levels of protection. Both of the brain and the spinal cord are protected by layers of membrane called meninges. Then there's the cerebrospinal fluid. This is important because it provides a buffer between the brain and the skull, or the spinal cord and the vertebrae, to reduce any possible damage from force. Lastly, the brain is further encapsulated by the skull and the spinal cord by the vertebrae, in order to give it a hard protective layer. It is urgent that the brain and spinal cord are completely protected at all times, because they are composed of various parts that each have specialized functions that keep us moving, processing information, and most importantly, alive. Next is the first subcategory of the peripheral nervous system, known as the somatic system. The somatic system is responsible for transmitting sensory and motor information for voluntary movement, such as running, waving, and dancing. The system contains two major types of neurons. First, you have sensory neurons, which are also known as afferent neurons, that carry information from the nerves to the central nervous system. It is the sensory neurons that allow us to take in sensory information and send it back to the brain and spinal cord. These neurons convert external stimuli into internal electrical impulses. For example, when someone puts ice on your hand, the sensory neurons send a message from your hand to the nervous system telling you that the ice is cold. Motor neurons, on the other hand, can also be known as efferent neurons, which carry information from the brain and the spinal cord to muscle fibers throughout the body. These motor neurons allow us to take physical action in response to stimuli and our environment. Without proper motor neurons, we would be unable to live the active lives the way we are used to now. The second subcategory of the peripheral system is the autonomic system, which is responsible for regulating involuntary body functions such as blood flow, heartbeat, digestion, and homeostasis. This system is also divided into two branches. The sympathetic system regulates the flight or fight response. The system prepares the body to consume energy and deal with potential threats in the environment. When action is needed, the sympathetic system will trigger a response by speeding up the heart rate, increasing breathing, increasing blood flow to muscles, and dilating your pupils. This allows the body to respond quickly in situations that require immediate action. In some cases, we may stay and fight the threat, while in other cases, we may flee from the danger to protect ourselves. On the other hand, the parasympathetic system helps maintain normal body functions and conserve physical resources. Once the threat has passed, the system will slow down the heart rate, slow breathing, reduce blood flow to the muscles, and once again constrict the pupils. This allows us to return our bodies back to our normal resting state. It is also important to understand how the brain sends signals to communicate with the rest of the body in order to keep us alive. Messages in the brain are using electrical impulses, which then release a chemical signal throughout the body. The first step is that an electrical impulse is triggered from the cell of one neuron and travels down the axon to the end. This impulse is called the action potential. Next, the impulse gets to the end of the axon and it releases a chemical called a neurotransmitter that's found in the terminal buttons at the end of the axon. The neurotransmitter then has to cross a gap called the synapse or the synaptic gap to get to the dendrites of the next neuron to continue relaying the message. Neurons play an essential role in communication throughout the body. If we were able to magnify the view of individual neurons, we'd be able to see that there are millions of neural cells within our body, each with distinct parts. The three main components of a neuron are the dendrites, the soma, and the axon. Neurons communicate with one another by receiving information through the dendrites, which act as an antenna. Then, the dendrites channel this information to the soma, which is also known as the cell body. It builds up as an electrochemical signal, which this signal is called the action potential, which then shoots down the axon, which is a long tail that connects the soma onto the next neuron. Both the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system work closely together in a cycle in order to ensure that the body is processing and responding properly to stimuli in order to keep the body safe and healthy. The general flow of information is that the peripheral nervous system takes information to the sensory neuron and sends it to the central nervous system to be processed. After processing the central nervous system then tells the peripheral nervous system what to do, whether that be telling the muscles to flex or that the lungs need more oxygen or any number of biological responses. Then, the peripheral nervous system is able to make it happen through muscle control. The neurons responsible for taking the information to the central nervous system are also known as afferent neurons, while the neurons that carry responses from the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system are known as efferent neurons. Without both processes functioning together properly, we would lack the ability to function as a human and would not be able to interact or respond to our environments.